Welcome to Podcast Unlocked, episode 238 for March. It doesn't matter. I'm on vacation, and it doesn't matter for you.
Yeah.
We'll talk about why in a second.
22nd. Thank you, telephone. 23rd.
My name is his name's Mitch Dyer.
Great start.
I'm really out of
It's
whack
fine.
today.
You and I are like, it's the end of the day. You're about to go on vacation. It's going to be great.
Yeah, anyway, I'm Ryan. That's Mitch.
Hello.
You know us as Podcast Unlocks co-hosts, 2 of the 4 or 8 of them, however many we have. We're going to have to add another one now. So, Mitch Dyer, you, my friend. First of all, if you're wondering what the hell is going on,
Where
with this
is
show this
everybody?
week, last week was GDC, as you know, and it was crazy busy. We had all kinds of cool people in IGN. Went down GDC.
Played lots of cool games.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So, in the interests of sharing some of those experiences with you, this show is going to be about 5 or 10 minutes of intro with Mitch and I here, as we're doing right now. And then next up is an interview with Donald Mustard. He came in, and if you don't know Donald Mustard, he is the co-founder of Chair Entertainment, the incredible folks behind the even more incredible Shadow Complex. And before that, Mitch, Undertow for Live Arcade.
Undertow. I
and
love that game.
Near and dear to my heart, a flawed but, in my opinion, very impressive game for a number of reasons. Advent Rising. Yes.
A beauty.
Yes.
An OG Xbox beauty.
So, Chair, of course I'm going to ask about Shadow Complex 2. I would not be doing my job, nor would I be a fan if I didn't ask that question. So, I really hope you enjoy the interview with Donald Mustard. Then immediately following that, Jaime Griesemer was in here. And Jaime is one of the original designers on the original Halo. He was there up through 3. He is fantastic. Jaime is sort of the guy credited with inventing the Halo's famous 30 seconds of fun loop. So, bunch of cool Halo stories. We do get into a little bit of their new project, which is Golem for PlayStation VR. I realize that's not an Xbox thing. So, should you desire, when it gets to the part about PlayStation VR and Golem, you can stop listening to the show because that's the last thing in the show this week.
Still, recommend you do because PlayStation VR, super important to the future of video games.
Absolutely. In the meantime, Mitch Dyer,
Yes.
you put out a tweet recently.
Yes.
Caused a bit of a stir.
Yeah.
Certainly for me.
Yeah,
and
said I
everybody in
wasn't
this
that excited
office.
about Batman v Superman.
That's not the tweet I'm referring to.
My bad.
No, it's that you have. Well, you know what? You take it away. I'm not going to steal your thunder.
Yeah, Friday, April 1st is my last day at IGN. And
I
that's
hate you so much
I know,
right
it's
now.
a really, really hard thing to say out loud because I've been doing this for almost 5 years. Like, IGN has been my home, and it's like where I grew up and became like a real adult person and honed my skills and became an on-camera person and learned to do more things than I was doing when I was freelancing, when I was just an excited little nobody who's just like, I like to review games. That's cool, right? So yeah, I came to IGN in 2011 as a contractor, moved to the States in 2012, and I've just been doing everything here since. And I think I've been on Unlocked since I got here, since week 1.
That was going to be the thing I was going to bring up was to not only thank you for being on this podcast, so the quick story, not to make this about me, but like when I came in, I started at the very tail end of May, right before E3, in 2012. First day here, I said there was this Podcast Unlocked thing that had changed from 3 red lights, but it was sort of, with no disrespect to anybody, kind of leaderless. Like, it was just sort of this thing that you guys occasionally did.
It was very scattered. Like, when I was doing Unlocked, we went in and it was just like, we're going to talk about Spelunky or whatever people are playing that week, Battlefield 3, because Peter did the review, and just kind of figuring out, like, games are cool, let's talk about those Xbox stuff. All right, have a good one.
Yeah. So then I came in, and I love radio and podcasts so much. I just wanted to, like, okay, I have an idea for this. Let's do it. And you've been there with me since the beginning. You are technically the longest tenured member, longer than me.
Yeah.
Up until next week, or up until when I get back from my vacation.
Pretty much.
Because you were on it before I got here. So you are the longest tenured member of Podcast Unlocked, and it has been a pleasure doing shows with you every single week.
Likewise, man.
I
this
love
has
you.
been a
You are
staple of my week.
A lot of people probably don't know, you and I knew each other before we both came to IGN.
Yep.
I worked at Official Xbox Magazine, and you came onto my radar. You ended up worming your way in as a freelancer. Yeah. You were doing freelance preview work for me. You do other stuff for OXM. We got to know each other that way.
Played some Resident Evil.
Yes, Resident Evil 5, which gets a lot of hate.
Game's fun.
But because I played it with you, I played the whole thing. You and I rolled it in, 3 nights, whatever it was. I love that game.
Me too.
Because my entire experience with it was co-op start to finish with you. I never played it in single player.
No, me either.
But yeah, I know what you're up to, and I know you're going to share that with the world in the coming weeks
Very
and months.
soon.
And I'm super stoked for you. I'm very
Thank you.
selfishly sad.
Yeah, I'm sad too. Like I don't know. It's a new and exciting thing,
Yeah.
and I'm very excited about it. But it's also very bittersweet to be leaving behind California and IGN
Yeah.
and everything that comes with it, like the people here, right? Like, I don't know. This is a special place, and it is really hard to let go of it.
Well, you're going to get your own chance. The show is yours next week.
Oh yes,
while
Ryan's
I'm
on vacation.
So you
My
guys know what
last
that
episode
means.
will be if you like the original podcast, Unlocked, you're in for a real treat.
Mitch is
where we
going to
don't
burn
really know
it to
what
the
we're
ground
doing.
next week.
Yeah.
It's going to be like just torching every bridge. How many developers are you going to give the finger to, or PR people, or don't do any of that?
It's actually it's gonna be a lot like this, except without Ryan, and it's just gonna be a 75-minute filibuster.
I believe you're now qualified to work in American government. You've been here long enough to you know how to fill it out.
That's how it works.
So you're awesome. I will
Thank
miss
you.
you, but I wish you the best. I know you are going to grow and evolve and further yourself
Thank you.
professionally and personally, and you're going to do great.
Thank you.
And you're, of course, welcome back here anytime.
I'm gonna listen to this show as a listener now.
You probably, in hindsight now, should not have let Destin back into the game on the Dookie, because you could have taken that Dookie
I would have
trophy
been the winner.
with you to your new work
know.
desk in your new
I know.
place. Now you have nothing.
No, it's fine.
To show for it.
Listen, I'm a very charitable guy. I like to make people feel good about themselves when they're feeling down, so I do what I can.
You hear that, Destin?
He doesn't.
You are a charity case in Mitch Dyer's eyes.
do want to point out, if we look at the statistics for this year, I'm on track to annihilate him.
Oh,
Annihilate
snap.
him. So again,
But you won't.
This is a charity. I gave my notice specifically so that Destin would feel good about 2016, so he'd have something to live for and work toward.
All right, so you guys all have one more week with Mitch. Next week, without me, do with the show as you will. I know you'll take good care of it while I'm gone.
Gonna be a good one.
And stay tuned. So again, we all love you, Mitch. Thank you.
Of course.
You kick ass.
Thank you. You too. And you. And you. You.
And all of you.
You.
But seriously, stay tuned. If you're done listening to us, we'll get back to the guys. Get back to talking pure Xbox next week.
Lots of news to catch up on.
Mitch's goodbye show. I'll be back the week after. And for right now, a little something special, I think. Donald Mustard, followed immediately by Jaime Griesemer. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys next week. Very special guest on Podcast Unlocked this week. You know him as the man behind one of my favorite super underrated original Xbox games, I think, Advent Rising, and much, much more famously, Shadow Complex, and the one that puts the Ferrari in the driveway, of course, your iOS action that's turned into 3 games. So, Donald Mustard, hi.
Hi.
How's it going? It's been a long time since I've seen you.
It has been a while.
Yeah, they don't let you out much, do they?
Well, I know we love making games, so we spend our time doing that.
Well, let's start. I want to start with the fact that you've been a game developer for a very long time. You're a young man, but you've been at this for quite some time.
Sure.
And you've always worked with your brother Jeremy.
Yes.
When did you guys know that you wanted to be game developers? You wanted to make games?
That is a great question. So, my name's Donald, and Jeremy is my younger brother by just over 2 years. So we're about 2 years apart. And growing up, we were always just really great friends. And when we were young, I was probably 12 and he was around 10. We're like, man, someday. And I'm sure lots of siblings say this. We're like, someday we're going to work together and we're going to do cool stuff and we're going to take over the world and all that. And we were dumb enough to believe it. We're like, we're going to do this. And we started scheming even then. And then it wasn't even video games. It was like, either we're going to go make movies or we're going to do comic books or video games or whatever. And but we started kind of actually going down that path. My brother began becoming, he began voraciously learning how to become a programmer, and I started really focusing on art. And we're like, if we can do that,
Now, was that by, and those are extremely complementary things, particularly in a game development scenario. Did that happen organically, or did you guys like have a meeting about it and be like, all right?
We kind of had a meeting about it. No, because Jeremy, even though he is a brilliant programmer, is a very good artist. And probably if he chose to, could have gone that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have been a brilliant programmer, but I'm not. I mean, I'm.
You know your way around the Unreal Engine, right?
Bit, right. You know. But yeah, we kind of strategically kind of went that route, and that was kind of the plan. When we got to college, we were definitely leaning towards film at that point. We're like, yeah, I think we're gonna go into the movie industry and kind of do this. And then Final Fantasy VII came out. And we were these just poor college kids, right? We didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But this game came out. We're like, oh, we have to check it out. And so we scraped a few dollars together. We went to Blockbuster. We rented a PlayStation. We rented Final Fantasy VII. And we got home. We started playing it, and we realized, oh my gosh, we didn't have
no memory card.
No memory card. No memory card, and we couldn't afford a memory card.
Yeah.
Right.
No, they were expensive. That's where they made all the money.
Right. And so we're like, okay, this is changing everything, and so we're just gonna not go to classes. We're not gonna sleep. We have to beat this game in 72 hours before we have to return it. And we can't save. There can't be any power fluctuations, right? And so we played through Final Fantasy VII, start to finish. We didn't sleep. We'd like guard days. Like just our roommates would come in and be like, shut the doors softer. Don't shake anything. Bump the disc. And by the end of it, we're like, we have to make games.
Did you finish it? Did you do it?
Oh, of course.
No memory card.
No memory card.
And a rental period. You guys beat Final Fantasy VII.
Exactly. Absolutely, we did. Yeah.
And so after that, that was like the tipping point that really inspired you guys?
Yeah, I mean, because we'd always been gamers, but to me, there was something about the storytelling on display in Final Fantasy VII that said to us, games really are going to be the most relevant entertainment medium moving forward.
Yeah.
We really felt that way, and we're like, why? And I deeply love films, right? But we're like, why would we want to go tell stories in film that could be awesome and fulfilling? But we've kind of figured out how to tell a 2-hour story, right? Whereas games, like we're still trying to, even now, we're still just figuring out what this medium can even be.
Yeah. And
that just seems so exciting to say, let's dedicate our life's work to kind of pioneering this new form of entertainment, or being there in this kind of pioneering phase. And
so my next question was, what were some of your favorite games as kids? You've just answered a big one, but did you guys play what were some of your other favorites, the two of you as kids?
So we definitely grew up in the Nintendo era,
yeah.
Right? Well, we were a Nintendo house, not a Sega house, right?
Well, so are you talking? But so you guys were 16-bit era, because I feel like you're probably around my age or so. I mean, I was an NES. Were you NES
we were
guys?
Definitely NES. Oh,
okay,
yeah.
So
no, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Sega was sort of master. Nobody had a master system at that point.
Yeah, but no, by then our loyalties were firmly cemented, right? So
yeah.
No, I mean like. Obviously, we were very, like our favorite games were Zelda, Metroid, things like that. It definitely
Castlevania,
I
presume.
Right. Things have had an influence on our. But yeah, no, I think definitely like my favorite game of all time is probably still Super Metroid. I think all the early Zeldas are amazing. I look at stuff like, obviously we all the same games everyone loves, but we love the Mega Man series. I love Battletoads. We loved like the Final Fantasy stuff. And then, moving forward, like Half-Life was like, we're huge gamers, so we play a lot of everything.
What was your first attempt to make a game? Did you guys do anything like did you have like an Amiga or a Commodore 64 around?
Yeah, well, so no, it's interesting.
Or
so,
PC for that matter.
We didn't actually have a computer in our home. This is the crazy thing. Like, how did Jeremy become this brilliant programmer with no computer? When he was probably about 12 years old, he started asking for programming books for Christmas, even though we had no computer. And so he was getting like these manuals for C and
C++,
and like reading them. And at one point, I think my dad's like, "Oh my goodness, like we need to do something." And so he would at night he'd bring home like an ancient like a laptop, but which was really like these big slightly portable computers, right? He'd bring home a laptop that Jeremy could start working on, right? And it kind of went from there. So we would design a lot of games on paper, we wouldn't actually make them. But,
Sure.
But even still, like, I could show you the drawing I did when I was 12 years old that became Undertow.
Wow.
Right? I mean, like, we designed that game when we were 12.
I'm going to get to that, but I want to start a little further back. So your first big game, Advent Rising, for the original Xbox. Now, to me, as I said at the top, I really feel like that game's criminally underrated. I think it was a great story. The power progression, you really could sense, you could tangibly feel how much more powerful you got as the game went along. It had a great story to it. Orson Scott Card wrote the script to this game. So, and to be fair, it was rough around the edges technically on the original Xbox.
Yep.
But it was really good. I mean, are you bummed that it didn't do better?
Well, you know, I mean, we loved making Advent, right? And that was our first, you know, game. And I agree with you. I mean, I think there was a lot of innovative ideas in the game, but I think that game also demonstrates, you know, some of our design naivete, right? Like some of our immaturity as really understanding what it takes to make a game, right? That was definitely a game that was more ambitious than our ability to, like, again, you could see, it's amazing that you could see that, because I think there's so many innovative ideas that we were able to express in Advent. What we didn't know was what it really takes to finalize and ship and squash all the bugs, you know, all the things that go into actually just like finishing a game. And so I think there is a lot of roughness around the edges because we didn't understand what we were getting into. So I'm so glad we made Advent. It does have a lot of fans that love it, but that was definitely me not understanding how complex a game really is. Right?
So I mean, you're being humble about it, which is great. But I mean,
I think it's just the truth.
Well,
right?
but was Majesco to blame for this game not doing super well?
Not at all. No, I mean, again, ultimately, like at the end of the day, like Majesco are the people who gave me a shot.
Right.
Like how crazy is that? Like this young group of people that had never made a game before.
Yeah.
In no respect should have been given even $1 to make a game. Like they believed in what we were doing and they gave us a shot. And you know, I have nothing but the deepest respect for Jesse and Joey and all those guys at Majesco. Like they're incredible, and they believed in us when no one else could have, right? And no, I think at the end of the day, you know, it mostly comes down to, you know, me, right? I scoped that game too big, and I had no idea, right? I had no idea what we were doing, right? And you know, if we would have scoped it maybe differently, or you know, whatever, it is what it is. Like you live and learn. But it still did, you know, well enough that everything's fine. But yeah, I mean that there's definitely ideas in Advent that I hope to return to someday. Just again, some of the core design ideas and the progression.
Well, it was originally conceived as a trilogy. Is that
absolutely.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, like that unbridled ambition, right?
Yeah.
Like we were just like, no, this is what it should be. And it was definitely like our statement on what's the ultimate game that could ever be made. And I'm still just shocked at how much crazy stuff we were able to get in there, right? Like actually making you feel like a superhero as you play the game, right? And having a game that begins as more of a shooter and ends as you're just like this super powered being that's like flipping through the air and doing multiple headshots while doing backflips, and you can control it all while doing superpowers. Like there was some crazy awesome stuff in there. And I think if we could have just, again, had the maturity to finish it correctly, it could have been one of the biggest games ever.
Would it have was it just a time thing? Did you need 6 more months or a year, or are you talking about scoping it? Would you have needed to sort of cut it down a little bit and really sort of focus it a little more?
I mean, if I was talking to 2003 version of me, yeah, I would be, you know, I would make some scoping changes a little bit, right? Like there was probably some areas and a couple features we could have been like, you know, instead of doing 8 powers, do 6, right? Because then you can polish them right. Instead of doing this, do that. Like I think a little bit of scoping, a little better planning on time, and yeah, I mean, and again, like an understanding technology and optimization a little bit better, which we do now, right? Like, yeah, it'd be much easier for us to make Advent today.
And I mean, the reason I bring up the Majesco thing is because what a lot of people might not remember is that as a marketing tool for the game, there was $1 million contest associated with the game where players were supposed to find these
I've erased that from my memory.
that were literally hidden in the game. They were coded into the game. We'd never really seen a marketing stunt like that before. The whole thing ended up getting canceled. So first of all, whose idea was that? Because it was an interesting idea,
Yep.
and what the hell happened with that whole thing?
So it was definitely a cool idea. I think it was a cool idea. I don't remember who pitched it, but I don't remember who pitched it. But it's a great idea, and we were like, yes, let's totally do this.
Yeah.
Let's get it working.
If you found, I think it was supposed to be 7 clues.
I don't remember.
And if you
It was-
found them all, you were in some sort of chance
Yep.
for $1 million.
No, we
right?
actually had these items hidden in the game.
Yeah.
That you would find, and it would ping Microsoft servers like when you did it, and all that. And unfortunately, I guess we're far enough away and just say what happened.
statute of limitations. Do it.
Microsoft servers didn't work. It was Microsoft's fault.
Interesting.
It just didn't work. We'd had it all tested. They were like, "Yep, it totally works." There was some stuff. Again, this is still the early days of even Xbox Live, right? This is original Xbox.
Yep.
Right. And while it could do kind of like player-to-player, multiplayer matchmaking a little bit, it wasn't. They hadn't tested their systems in order to do some of this stuff, and so it didn't work, which sucks because we'd already talked about it. And so
Right.
that was not helpful.
Yeah, because that was the days when there was a term that nobody will remember now called live aware, which not even every game was live aware, meaning
Yep.
you couldn't even see that your friends were online
Yep.
in certain games. Like it was only as you said for a peer-to-peer multiplayer matchmaking thing.
Right.
So the Wild West days of Xbox. Now, clearly the relationship didn't affect you too badly because you went on to do Shadow Complex.
Oh yeah,
with
again,
Microsoft,
it wasn't.
which
It was
we'll
all
get
with
to.
the best intention. It wasn't
Yeah.
like Microsoft intended to do that. It was
Right.
just it was Wild West stuff, right?
But I'm curious, how'd you hook up with Orson Scott Card? How did these kids from that have come from nowhere, effectively? No offense.
No, it's true.
You don't have much of a track record at that point, and you're hooking up with Orson Scott Card.
Well, so I've always had. Well, it's not just me. Our entire team at Chair, we've always had the audacity of hope, right?
Yes.
Like we've always just had this kind of crazy idea that people are people, and you can just talk to anyone, and the worst thing that can happen when you talk to someone is they could just say no, or they can disagree with you, and so we've always just, even our earliest relationship with Epic, right? We were just like these kids out of college. No one should have been talking to us, and Jeremy's doing research on engines, and he's like, "Oh, this Unreal stuff looks really cool." We're like, "Yeah, Unreal Tournament's awesome," and we call up Tim Sweeney. We just called him up, and he talked to us because it's Tim, and he's amazing. And he's like,
You used Unreal for Advent, right?
We did, yes.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's
you were in business with him to an extent.
Well, it started with that because we call him up and he's like, "Oh yeah, our stuff's really cool, and you know what? Why don't you guys should just come out to North Carolina? And you should just like hang out with us." And it started with that. Like we flew out to Epic and we didn't even know what to expect. But by the end of even that day, I'm sitting at Cliff's house. When me and Jeremy are sitting on Cliff's back porch having a barbecue with Cliff and Mark and Tim Sweeney and Mark Rain, and we're just like hanging out. And these guys are so nice and so encouraging, and that would have never happened if we weren't just like, let's give them a call.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of the same thing we did with Orson Scott Card. That's the same thing we did with Peter David, who ended up writing all the Shadow Complex stuff for us. It's how we started working with Brandon Sanderson on Infinity Blade. It's how we started working with J.J. Abrams, right? A lot of this stuff is just us being crazy enough to be like, let's just ask.
Yeah.
And doing that. And there's crazy stories I could tell you for every one of those partners. But really it starts with that and with our desire to collaborate with people. I really believe, this has kind of been the core tenet of Chair, is our core philosophy is try to find
a key leg of Chair,
a key
if you
leg
will.
of Chair, yes. Has been, if we can find really, really talented people, then we can just trust them and we can get out of their way and let them do what they're good at. And we've tried really hard to build a team of people that are very passionate about making games, and we try and just let them make them and try and recognize our weaknesses. Like we're not the best writers in the world. We're not this or whatever. And there's people out there that are so good at it. Let's try and collaborate with them. And it's interesting for me personally because there are people out there like J.J. Abrams and Brandon Sanderson that I just have such crazy respect for. Like I read Brandon Sanderson's books and I'm just like, this is like the best stuff I've ever in my life. And as a fan of that, my inclination isn't, oh, I can't just wait to read more. I'm like, I have to meet them. I have to find a way to work with them because I want to understand what's in their head. What are the things that lead them to these awesome things they invent? And then inevitably that leads to me being like, we got to work together. Let's do something. And then we are. And I smile all the time.
Yeah, so you clearly have a charm about you. You are wooing these people and winning them over.
I don't know about that. I think it's just I just ask.
It's a life lesson though, right? You'd be surprised what you can get if you just ask nicely, right?
Yep.
That's all it is.
Well, it's what Steve Jobs what I would say, right? He would say, it's a shocking moment when you realize that everything that humans have done, all the stuff that we've invented, it was all done by people that are probably just about as smart as you are, right? And yet we've accomplished the world. Right? And so just ask. Most people are actually pretty cool.
Just ask. There you go, kids. Let's move forward. Chair. You formed Chair because Advent, you guys were Glyphex.
Yep.
Chair, much
we really
better
are
name.
just going through everything, right?
Much better Chair, much better name. You come up with Undertow, which you mentioned earlier. You drew it out with your brother as a kid on paper. It was a fantastic early Xbox Live arcade game, arcade action shooter. I'm curious, did you make this smaller scale game as a direct response to having just done this huge big thing with Advent Rising?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, so we formed Chair, and
built a chair.
We built.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'll stop now.
We built Chair and we formed Chair, and we, for us it was, we initially started going down the road of traditional game development,
right? Where
our the first 3 or 4 months of Chair, we built a first-person shooter game demo that we're like, because that's what you do. You build a demo, you go and you shop at the publishers, you show it to everyone, and the publisher's like, yes, we'll give you X amount of millions of dollars to make that into an actual game that will come out.
Vertical slice, right?
It's vertical slice, right? So we made this awesome. We made this awesome vertical slice of what would a Chair first-person shooter be. It was very innovative, had some very innovative ideas and whatever. And we built that vertical slice, and we started shopping it to publishers. But shopping a game to publishers takes months, if not a year or more, right, to get a deal. And as we were doing that, we're like, it was about the time that Xbox 360 was coming out, and there was like just the twinkle in the eye of the gaming universe that there could be this digital marketplace, right? That not every game had to be a $60 box.
They were integrating it into the console itself,
exactly.
Live Arcade.
Yep, and we're like sitting there, and there was the formation of Chair. There was 7 of us, and we're like, let's not keep working on the vertical slice. It's done. Like, what are we gonna do? And we're like, what if we designed a game that we could build with 7 people in like 5 or 6 months?
Yeah.
Could you even build a game in like 6 months? That's crazy, right? Like, games take 3 years, and so we said, yeah, let's do it. And so we're like, okay, everyone go home and think of cool games that we could build with 7 people in 6 months. And tomorrow we're gonna come back, and we all sat around the next day, and we sat in a circle for 2 days straight, actually, and we'd be like, okay, pitch a game, and we had 30 seconds each to pitch, and by the end of that, we had like a list of like 200 game ideas, right? Yeah. And one of those, right, was, I'm like, oh man, I remember that drawing that we did. Remember that game we were talking about when we were 12? I'm like, I have that drawing, and I went and like dug through myself, and I'm like, I brought the drawing. I'm like, this is what we should make, And out of those 200 ideas, we whittled it down to 5 or 6 that we thought we could actually build and we actually wanted to work on. And at the end of that, we're like, no, Undertow, that's what we want to make. We love that idea. And so we built the game super fast. Within 2 weeks, we had the full kind of playable loop in. And we're like, oh my goodness, this game is super, super fun. And again, not that they're even related in any way at all, but I think some of the core tenets that MOBAs have popularized, right, of in-round progression, a fast match with objective-based kind of stuff was the core of what Undertow was, years before that, right? It's like you level up during the round. It's not, and so some of those elements were really fun. And
just go ahead and take credit for inventing MOBAs, Donald. It's fine.
I'm not saying that at all. It's not a MOBA. But what it was is we found this hook that we thought was so fun, and we had this moment of clarity where I'm not going to say who, and it doesn't really matter, but we were in London, and we had been meeting with different publishers, and it wasn't just some of the ones we were meeting in London, but we were on the eve of, we had 2 publishers that were like, we want to sign a deal with you guys to make this first-person shooter. And Undertow was about 4 months into development, and we're like, man, this game is really, really good. And it was like, it was crazy. We were like in this 800-year-old hotel in this teeny little stairwell, and all of us, it was Jeremy and myself and Laura, who does all of our business development and PR and marketing, and Ryan, our CEO at the time, right? And we were all sitting there and we're like, do we really want to sign a deal to go make a first-person shooter and grow our team to 100 people and do what everyone else is doing? I'm like, or do we want to make this little teeny game? Like, what if that works? Like, we've funded this ourselves. What if we take no money from a publisher and we just do it ourselves? And we all were kind of looking at each other and we're like, oh my gosh, are we going to do this? Are we going to turn away $10 million and viability for our company? And we're like, oh my God, yeah, we're doing it.
Wow,
and
that's a huge risk.
It's so dumb. Like, I can't believe, but it just felt like this was.
You trusted your gut.
It was our gut, and it was saying, the future that we want is to be able to make the games we want to make, not be beholden to someone else's money. And so we said no, and we self-published Undertow.
I mean, had you talked to people like Greg Canessa and the Live Arcade team at that point? To like, were you sort of fully bought in on the No, this is blind.
No, we were just like, we think the future is here. Let's go for it.
Wow.
Right? And it was so crazy. And then we started talking to Microsoft, like, hey, we have this game. It's actually pretty fun. and we put it out, and it was pretty successful. I mean, it won several Game of the Year awards, which is like, what? How can this win Game of the Year awards?
I think we did. I think at OXM we might have given it our Xbox Live Arcade Game of the Year.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Well deserved.
Yes. Well, thank you.
It was great. And congratulations, 8 years later or whatever it is.
No, and it sold pretty well.
Yeah.
Enough that we're like, we could make another game. And the other game we wanted to make when we had our team pitch that we're like, that game would take more than 6 months was Shadow Complex. Right? And we're like, now we can make Shadow Complex. We know how to do it. We know how to ship these things. This is the future. Let's make Shadow Complex. And we can move on. But the result of Undertow, even beyond sales, and which were modest, and awards, which were great, was the industry took notice. Our phone started ringing off the hook. Every publisher in the industry was like, it wasn't now like, how can we publish your game? It was, how can we buy you?
Well, it's like you won a Best Supporting Actor Oscar, and suddenly you're getting all the scripts, right? That's basically the equivalent of what happened.
Right. Well, because I think the publishers also saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
They're like, there's a future here, and teams that are starting to figure out how to do some of this stuff, because there were and still are different hurdles to digital and understanding that marketplace, and so we were kind of forging that path there, and then when we started showing at GDC a few months later, we started showing, we had like an iPhone, one of the original iPhones, and it had a little video of some of our early Shadow Complex development on it, and that's where people were like, oh, like, we have to buy you, and that's where we chose to become part of Epic.
And you were loyal. They gave you, they helped you out, and that's awesome.
And they were the ones who also said, we'll let you make the games you want.
Yeah, half these publishers probably wanted to just turn you into a run-of-the-mill.
Yeah, I'd be like, you could make awesome like Doritos games. It would be sweet.
So before I move on to Shadow Complex, because I know I'm already running out of time with you, but with one last thing on Undertow, I learned today that you and your brother drew this game out when you were 12 years old. So was there any point where you go out to dinner with your brother after all the awards, everything's over with Undertow, and you sit there and you look at each other and go, we just took that, like, 12-year-old us just made something amazing. Like, is there ever that moment where you just sort of sit and reflect on the fact that the 12-year-old versions of yourselves just laid the seed for the catalyst for the success of your entire adult lives?
You know, we don't do that enough, honestly. Like, I think that's actually one of my core weaknesses as a human being is we don't celebrate enough. Like I think the truth is, like, inside we're always so afraid that someone's going to discover that people are paying us to make games and then force us to go do something real. Like, you know, that we're just so scared that we're like, we got to keep working, and we don't celebrate enough. So we need to do more of that. But there was one moment that came post Infinity Blade where we're always like, we'll know we're successful when we have enough extra money that we can, like, rent out a water park to have, like, you know, a day for just everyone at chair.
Yeah.
And there came a moment where we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this. And we rented out a water park.
There can't be that many of you at chair, right?
And even that, we're like, we're not going to invite anybody. It's just going to be like just us and, like, our spouses and our kids, right? And so it's like this huge.
I love you guys are still 12.
Yeah,
this is
awesome.
awesome.
It's like this huge water park, and there was like 50 people there,
Yes.
right? And like we're like, and I remember standing up on, like, this water slide with Jeremy, and we're looking out and, like, the sun setting, you know, and I'm just like, this is awesome. Like, I can't believe all of us have built this thing, you know, and, like, so lucky.
That is
for all
literally the
people.
best video game success story I've ever heard.
So that's probably the moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, like, this is it. This
That's
is awesome.
So Shadow Complex, we move on to that as you kindly segued straight into for me, just flawlessly. Did you guys just dig deep into the? You said Super Metroid's your favorite game ever.
Yep.
I mean, is that where that came from? Were you just inspired by your favorite game of all time?
That was definitely a huge part of it. But I mean, it was also, you know, so this was probably 2007,
Yeah.
right? That we started developing Shadow Complex, early 2007. And for me, looking at the landscape, you know, for us, it always starts with what game do we want to play? Like, what's a game that we want to play that whether it is or isn't being made, like, what game do we want to play?
Yeah.
And then second, it's what can we do that other people aren't doing? And as we looked at the market and the landscape, I'm like, how come no one's made a side scroller in like 15 years? Let alone, how come no one's made like a non-linear exploration-based Metroid-esque Castlevania side scroller since basically Symphony of the Night in 1997?
Yeah.
And even more so, like, since, like, to me, Super Metroid is the pinnacle of 2D game design. And then a year later, the PlayStation came out, and everyone shifted to 3D.
Yep.
Right. And to me, it was like we'd look at ourselves and we'd be like, it's almost like if Quake got made, Doom and Quake got made, and then it was like, yeah, okay, those were cool games. Let's go make something else. And like, no one made first-person shooters for 10 years.
Right.
Like, that's to me was the equivalent. I'm like, no one's doing this. This is not just a viable genre, but it's like one of the best game genres there are, and no one's making games.
It's the onion of game. There's just so
Yes,
many
the
layers
onion,
to it.
right? The non-linear onion.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is just this encapsulation of brilliant design that no one was doing, and we're like, we've got to bring this back. It's our life's work to like bring this back and to show how viable this can be in a modern market. And like, what if you brought that design and you fused it with some of the modern design sensibilities of physics and cool 3D graphics and, you know, like, and like just cool systems that are available today? Wouldn't that be an amazing game? And again, we were fortunate enough to be in a position where, you know, publishers, I think publishers wouldn't have touched that game with a 10-foot pole. They'd be like, is it a first-person shooter? Oh, it's not. Is it a third-person cover-based shooter? Nope. All right, well then, whatever.
Move on.
But we had enough money from Undertow, and we had Epic saying, let's make something awesome. Just go make something awesome. And we're like, this is what we want to make. We believe if we build
because those guys were all self-made, super successful guys. So that's probably their whole spirit, right?
Right.
They're not beholden to market trends.
No, I mean, Epic is still the ultimate indie developer, right?
Yeah.
What's truly indie is being able to do what you want and not having to take money from someone that's going to tell you what to make.
Right.
And Epic is the ultimate indie, and we got to become part of them. So we've been independent the whole time, and we can just do what feels right. And and that's awesome, right? So we got to make Shadow Complex with no one telling us anything. We just got to make the game we wanted, and we,
You would have been noted to death by a major publisher on that game, probably, right?
It would have never happened.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but we were able to make it happen, and we just believed if we build it, people will like this. And our selfish hope was if we build it, people might get inspired by the genre, and then they'll make games that we can play. Because I know where everything is in Shadow Complex, right?
Yeah.
They can build an Onion game for me, and I'm like, and now if you say I've got Ori, I've got Axiom Verge, I've got Guacamelee, I've got Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet, right? Like there's all these games now, and so I'm not saying it's because of Shadow Complex, but it's been pretty cool.
So, of course, back that Summer of Arcade was a huge deal.
Yes.
Did you guys lobby for Summer of Arcade, or did Microsoft just call you up and go, hey, guess what?
I mean, it's a blend of everything, right? I mean, we definitely looped Microsoft in early. We're like, guys, this is magical. It's this amazing thing we've got, and there was definitely some champions within Microsoft. Mark Coates was a huge champion there, and Ken Lobb, which I don't know if you know Ken.
Huge gamer.
Right.
He's obviously a longtime Rare guy.
And was at Nintendo during Super Metroid.
Yes.
Right, and so he immediately
his roots run deep.
Yes, and he was immediately like, yes, right. And he was a huge champion for us within Microsoft, and even to the point of, with 9 months left on Shadow Complex, he was like, "Guys, there's some secrets. There's some secrets I know from the Super Metroid days. Let me tell you some of these formulas and things." And we're like, "Yes," and he gave them to us, and it totally made Shadow Complex so much better.
Wow,
Ken, I love you forever, right? And so, so that was a huge help. And then we've got an amazing team that make stuff happen. So
is there
Laura helped make Summer Arcade happen, and that was that, and being in the Microsoft press conference at E3 and all that stuff was huge for us.
So is there a point where that you're onto something with Shadow Complex? Do you believe in it from the beginning, or is there, because I've heard, I don't make games, I never have, but I've spoken to so many developers over the years that sometimes you kind of don't know until like 3 months to go. It all just comes together, and then you're like, yes, we've got this. So that's why I'm curious to ask you. With Shadow Complex, it became such this. I mean, when there is a holy trinity of Xbox Live Arcade games, and it's Limbo, it's Braid, and it's Shadow Complex. Those are the three. So is there a point in time while you're making it where you just know that you've got something special, or is it right at the end, or is it not till it comes out?
For us, we knew it was special pretty early on, and special to us, right? We knew that this is a game that we desperately want to play, and that's awesome to us. So we knew at the end of the day we were making something that was super special to us. What I've never known on any game I've ever made is whether other people would agree. I remember the day before Infinity Blade came out, a journalist asked me how many copies is Infinity Blade gonna sell? And I'm like, I looked around chair and I'm like, 11, right? But I knew Infinity Blade. I'm like, this is a game that is awesome, and it's innovative and it's totally different than what's out there. But I had no idea how the market would react, and it was the same with Shadow Complex. We knew we had something amazing, and we knew critics would probably like it because they played games like we did, but we had no idea if the market would respond.
So you're here to promote Shadow Complex Remastered. It's on the screen behind us.
Yes.
I'm going to get back to it in a second, but and I know we're on an Xbox podcast, sort of talking more of your console history, but you mentioned Infinity Blade, and I'm curious because I've got about 10 minutes left with you. What drew you guys to iOS, and how you end up becoming basically the killer app on the game side for iOS, for handheld, for mobile gaming? How's that happen?
It happens when whatever. Lucky, right? We made Shadow Complex. We loved it. By the end of it, we're like, we actually know how to make this kind of game. Let's go make Shadow Complex 2. And we started making Shadow Complex 2, and it was. You
famously had it spec'd out, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's very spec'd out. We know exactly what it would be when we get a call from Apple and Steve Jobs and through Epic and stuff. He's like, hey, our hardware is pretty amazing, and we think it can run Unreal Engine, and we think we should, there's something that could be shown here. And at the time, we're like, let's pause Shadow Complex because this is a really good opportunity for us to, again, epic wide, like really show what this technology can do. And we're like, yeah. And even then, like already I was, and many members of the team were starting to play mobile games.
Yeah.
Like we were starting to play, Sword and Poker and, lots of other games. And so we're like, we had some ideas, like, let's give it a try. But of course we'll get back to Shadow Complex. We're just, doing this thing really quick. But if we're going to do anything, we want to do it great. And so we really wanted to try and make something that was innovative and thoughtful of the platform and what could really be a unique mobile experience, but still have the tenets of good design and kind of console quality graphics. And it became this huge thing.
I love how you're just super modest because it just took off, and you end up doing 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And I gotta figure, I mean, this is business, this is life. I mean, it's Shadow Complex 2 hasn't come around because you're making too much money, right? I mean, is it just you just can't walk away from that on iOS? Is that fair to say?
I mean, that's not.
I mean, anybody would do the same thing in your shoes if that's the case. That's
definitely a huge part of it. That said, like, we love our babies, right? And like for us, like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that we'd make Infinity Blade 2. Like it wasn't like, yep, of course we're doing Infinity Blade 2. No, we were like, no, what's our next game? And we looked at all the options, and Shadow Complex 2 was definitely one of those options. But it was more. I'm not going to say the money didn't influence it heavily, but it was also very design influenced because we looked at Infinity Blade and we said, here we've kind of like. Within Shadow Complex, we were trying to reinvigorate a genre. With Infinity Blade, we had kind of stumbled into inventing a genre.
Right.
And from a design standpoint, we felt it was our duty to flesh out that genre and show what it was capable of. Because Infinity Blade was just a first step. And so we're like, we need 1, maybe even 2 more games to really show our vision of what this genre could encapsulate. And we felt pushed by our design imperative to do that, and we did. And by the end of Infinity Blade 3, we're like, yep, this is what we think the genre is, and now we don't need to do anything more with it.
And now you're renting out like a water park every weekend at that point, right?
Just once a year.
Just once a year.
But we do it every year now. Yeah.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah. So now Shadow Complex coming back around in the form of Shadow Complex Remastered. You re-released it for free on PC. Well, had it ever been on PC?
It had never been on PC.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yep. It's free on PC.
It was for a limited time. Yeah. So on the Epic Games launcher for a month, we gave it away for free.
Yeah. So why, after almost 10 years, are we coming back around to revisit Shadow Complex?
Because we love Shadow Complex. No, I mean, for us, we always want all of our games to be available to the widest audience possible. And we saw an opportunity. We're deeply involved in making Spy Jinx, and working with J.J. Abrams to make that. And he had this little side project called Star Wars, and so we're like, we need a side project too. We need we need And so joking aside, there was finally an opportunity. There's many complicated factors leading into why we couldn't do this earlier, but. The stars kind of aligned, and a moment appeared where we had the time and the resources, and when we actually could bring Shadow Complex up to the current code base of Spy Jinx and Infinity Blade, and put in the original art and put in the original. We even snuck in a few of the features of Shadow Complex 2 into the remaster, and because we wanted desperately to bring it to the PC audience, to the PlayStation audience, to the Xbox One audience, and it took us a while to get there, but we were never going to not do that. And so we've done it now, and we're so happy. We're so happy to make it available to a wider audience. We hope they like it.
I have to ask, backwards compatibility has been a big thing. With remastered now, or does that rule out the possibility of Shadow Complex being backwards compatible?
It is actually backwards compatible right now.
It is already.
Yeah,
okay,
it is
see,
already.
I need to check the list.
No, it's fine. It was actually it was one of the first ones.
So I don't have to buy this. I can if I already have it, it's working.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely, it's working. That said, if you want to play Shadow Complex with super high-res texture maps and with contextual melee takedowns that were going to be in Shadow Complex 2, you should buy it again. But But yes, I mean, it is by design largely untouched because we felt like the onion layer was so well designed.
Yeah.
We weren't going to break the onion layer.
Right. Well, so it's out now for $15 on all 3 platforms: PS4, Xbox.
No, so it's out right now.
Xbox One.
It's out today on Xbox One.
And later for PS4.
It'll be on PS4 and Steam in May.
May. Okay.
Yep.
Make sure I've got that straight. And now, last question I have for you, Donald, is for me, when I heard about Shadow Complex Remastered, my immediate thought is, why would they drum this back up unless they're trying to drum up interest for a proper Shadow Complex 2? So,
That's a good question.
Right now, on the world's #1 Xbox podcast, announce Shadow Complex 2 as your next game. Go ahead. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Spy Jinx is our next game. But Spy Jinx, we've been working on Spy Jinx for almost a year and a half. And so that game will come out sooner rather than later. And I would love nothing more than to make a Shadow Complex 2. And I would never hold Shadow Complex 2 hostage by saying, if you want Shadow Complex 2, show us.
Right.
Go show us you want it by supporting it. But I mean, that's partly
But it doesn't
true.
hurt.
It doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't hurt because I really, really want to make that game. And we have some amazing ideas for it. And we will someday absolutely make a Shadow Complex 2. It's just how soon.
That's good enough for me.
So.
Donald Mustard, co-founder of Chair Entertainment, a very independent subsidy of Epic Games. Your partners there. Thank you so much for coming in. I haven't talked to you in forever.
I know.
It's great to go through, to just go back, because your history.
It's crazy, actually.
Your history is so Xbox centric.
It
is kind of by accident. Like it almost. I mean, I don't even know why. I know you got to go. I don't even know why Advent Rising wasn't on PS2. But you've had an Xbox-centric history. I'm glad you could come in here on our Xbox show.
Yes.
And talk through everything. So Shadow Complex Remastered out now. It's on Xbox One first.
Yes.
For $15. But also, if you're an old geezer like me and you've got Shadow Complex already in your 360 library,
yep,
it's playable via backwards compatibility. Donald Mustard, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm with Jaime Griesemer. He is the co-founder of Highwire Games, makers of Golem for PlayStation VR. But let's go back in time, Jaime. Let's dial it. Let's go way back. Hop in the DeLorean. Get up to '88. You, of course, came onto the scene. You worked your way into Bungie.
Yeah.
So let's skip right to Halo. You were one of the designers on the original Halo.
Yeah. I was actually the first dedicated designer on Halo. Jason, the project lead, is also obviously a designer.
Jason Jones.
Jason,
you got the first name basis going on.
Yeah. He's obviously a designer, and obviously Halo was his baby. So I was able to learn and kind of take on way more than a junior designer really should have on such a huge project.
Tell me that story of how you told me when off air, but it's kind of an interesting story of how you even came to end up working at Bungie.
Oh yeah, so a lot of people, especially like aspiring game designers, will come to me and say, "How did you get into the industry? Like I'm looking to make it," and I'm like, "Well, I got in through blackmail and deception, so that's not going to work for you." This is a good story. Yeah. So basically, I was in college and I was getting a physics degree, which is a total different direction my life could have taken. But I was also running a fan website for Myth, which is the game that Bungie did before.
Yeah,
they
their
did
strategy
Halo.
game.
Yeah. Huge Myth fan, played a lot of it in college. And then I happened to send Marty O'Donnell an email. He was doing music he had done the music for Myth, but he wasn't yet part of Bungie. He was still running his own thing. And I said, "I'm a huge fan. I especially love your music. Like, can I do an interview?" So he said yes, because he's Marty and he loves to do interviews and talk to people, especially people that start off with how much they love his music. And so I sent him a bunch of questions, and it was like an email exchange. And the last question was, so like, how's the music coming for Myth 2? Like, are you going to use the same themes? And he wrote me back like, "Oh yeah, I just started the music and it's going really well. We're going to record pretty soon." And I'm like, "Hey Marty, they haven't announced Myth 2 yet, so you probably don't want me to announce it for them." what can we do? What can you
Look
do
at
for
you,
me?
you
yeah,
hoodlum.
yeah, and I mean, I didn't intend to strong arm him, but once I had that information, I had to leverage it somehow. I mean, what would you? No, don't answer that. So I kind of parlayed that into a visit to his studio, and that got me in the door.
Yeah, you
at
said you wanted to
Bungie.
come visit Bungie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So he walked me around and he introduced me to all these people, and I was just a total fan at the time.
Well, it's
So-
coincident you were in Chicago at the time too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was great. So I just took the L downtown, and that's how I met Jason the first time, and I met Doug Zartman, who did like the voice of some of the Marathon characters I loved, and he also introduced me to Max Hoberman, who was their community manager and sort of web master at the time.
Yeah.
And through that connection, I eventually got a job kind of as an intern and worked on Myth 2, and then wouldn't give my key back, so they had to keep giving me more jobs and more responsibility.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's so, yeah, don't blackmail people.
Yeah,
kids.
well,
That's the
or
lesson.
do. I think the lesson is do.
Okay, you said that, not me. I'm going to move on. No, you're sort of famously credited with inventing Halo's sort of legendary 30 seconds of fun.
I think
gameplay loop.
labeling it, maybe. Labeling it.
Labeling
it
it?
was, yeah, I mean, obviously the whole team is working on it, and Bungie had a lot of design values that led to how it felt, but I have a knack for branding gameplay, I guess.
Well, where did it come from? Where did 30 seconds of fun come from the team?
Yeah, well, I think my design value especially is you start with the player, you work outward through the controls and into kind of that core game loop, and then you build the rest of the game, the story, and the structure and that around it. And so the 30 seconds is that infinitely repeatable chunk of gameplay that is just always fun, and it's deep and kind of unpredictable in a way. And for Halo, that 30 seconds is like one encounter. So
Yeah.
it's sneaking up on a bunch of enemies, figuring out who you're going to attack first, hucking the grenade at the group while you then switch and target the lead or whatever, and then mopping up the rest of the grunts with melee attacks. It's just like that really quick cycle. And then I think people have misinterpreted that as you just do the exact same 30 seconds over and over and over and over and over and over. That's not the intention. What you do is then you take that 30 seconds and you put it in a different mission, and now there's no elite, there's 5 jackals, and you mix it up
Yeah.
within that structure, but you have to have that basic 30 seconds first.
Did that translate to multiplayer on purpose or on accident? Because I know Halo multiplayer in the original kind of came together late, right?
In a way, it came together late. In a way, it's where we started. So before you have cutscenes and AI and a lot of giant kind of well-constructed environments, you have multiplayer, which simulates a lot of those things. Like other players are your enemy AI. And if you can find something that's fun in multiplayer, then you can try to replicate that fun in single player. So we were playing multiplayer Halo long before any of the single player content was ready.
Interesting.
The transition to Xbox and doing it sort of on a LAN, on a console, that was the thing that came together very, very late.
So, yeah, because no one had really done it before, had made it fun on a gamepad. GoldenEye worked, sort of single thumbstick, but yeah, what's the process like for trying to take that first-person shooter and make it a really fun experience on a gamepad, which had never been done before?
Yeah, I mean, I think step one is arrogance, to just think that you can do something that hasn't been done before. And then step two is kind of necessity. So we were a PC and Mac game, and then sold the whole company to Microsoft specifically so we could go work on the Xbox. And so we knew we had to solve that challenge.
Yeah.
And Halo was not the first game to do movement on the left thumbstick and aiming on the right thumbstick. I think the reason why people give us credit for that is Halo was the first game to do it with such precision and kind of depth of the skill ceiling that you could play a sophisticated shooter with it, and that you could engage in a multiplayer game that wasn't just kind of random and sloppy.
Were you a Duke guy or a controller S guy? What did you think when those Duke controllers showed up?
Yeah, I have sort of tiny hands, so I didn't realize how kind of giant the Duke was until I played with the S, which was originally just the Japanese
Right.
Xbox controller, and I played with one of those, and some of the other guys in the studio did, and said, "Hey, can we get more of these? Like, can we get a lot more of these? Just keep bringing them." And I think that was the response kind of across Microsoft, and they went, maybe we should release these in other territories.
Where did the 2 weapons system come from? And that was another thing that had not, usually even go back to Doom, and it was 7-8 weapons, but a 2 weapon system in Halo.
Yeah, I think part of creativity and innovation is reacting to limitations and restrictions that are placed on you. So on a keyboard, you have, 120 buttons.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of spew as many as you need. It's very easy to go rocket launcher, machine gun, shotgun, right? On a controller, you have a lot fewer buttons to map to things. And we already knew we wanted to have kind of this direct actions for throwing grenades and melee attacks, so that couldn't be a swap. And so we really only had one button, and so if you get more than 2 weapons, it's not instantly predictable what's going to happen when you hit that button. And so a lot of it was just reacting to that.
Interesting.
And then utilizing that in the game mechanics and picking up different weapons of something that's heavily featured in the game. There's also memory requirements and things. Like if you're going to instantly switch to a weapon, it's got to be in memory. You can't hit the button and then wait for it to load and then it shows up. And
Hold on, I'm getting this out of my backpack. Just
yeah,
hang on a second.
Yeah, and you don't want to bring up like empty hands and then the gun pops in or something. So we, in order to have good-looking guns, we kind of had to limit the number that we knew you were going to be able to have access to.
Interesting. How about another Halo staple that it ended up influencing first-person shooters for years? In fact, to this day, the lack of health packs for the most part. The recharging shield system.
Yeah. That was part of a game called Tribes. There was one character class
Starsiege Tribes.
that had one sort of ability that you could get that would do that. And so sort of as a designer, you're constantly on the search for new game mechanics and different ways to apply them. So we found that we were running into this problem where we would start you in a mission with a certain amount of health, and then you'd get to the end, which is like supposed to be the hardest encounter. It's impossible to balance because some people get there and they haven't taken any damage. Some people get there and they've only got 10% of their health left. You can't balance one encounter for both of those guys. And so recharging health became kind of a way that we could really push on the player and allow them to experiment and be crazy and try different things, but never get themselves in a situation where they were kind of back against the wall and had no more options.
Right.
So the checkpoint system is a big part of that too. So we were not games before Halo very often had kind of manual saves.
Or you had to start the whole mission over.
Yeah, exactly. And if you messed up and you manually saved at 10% health, it could be literally impossible for you to get past the next section of the game. And so when we were automatically checkpointing you, that situation would come up quite a bit, which is why we had to have a way to kind of get you to some minimum health level.
Are there any good Halo 1 behind-the-scenes stories that have never been aired?
Oh,
that
man,
now
the
that you're
ones-
here, you could just, the statute of limitations is over.
The ones that haven't been aired probably haven't been aired for a reason. I mean, I think one thing that people don't realize is how hot like the whole game came in.
Yeah.
So we got bought by Microsoft. We all moved out to Seattle, and we had to rewrite huge portions of the engine. We had to rewrite huge portions of the story. We had to redo tons and tons of missions. And so it came together so fast that things that you think of are like as inseparable from Halo. Like we could not have Halo without a shotgun.
Right.
There was a meeting where we said, are we going to have the sniper rifle or the shotgun? Because we can't have both.
Huh.
And like serious meetings. Like
Wow.
this wasn't like a, some producer panicked and like tried to do something crazy. This was like, no, seriously, like we can't do both. And we decided, well, we have missions that use the sniper rifle, so we have to have the sniper rifle. So I guess we're cutting the shotgun. We walked out of the meeting thinking we were cutting the shotgun from
Wow.
Halo. I mean, and then of course, a group of us maybe came on the weekend and jammed it in there, sort of as like a skunk works project. But the line was so close, and so when we shipped the game, 75% of the team thought, well, this is a disaster. Like, this is going nowhere. Like, we're going to get destroyed as soon as the reviews come out. And I guess this was a fun experiment, but, let's start working on the new IP.
Wow.
Yeah.
You did cut the flamethrower though.
Yes.
That did hit the cutting room
Yeah,
floor.
that one was cut much earlier just for technical reasons. Like, we just couldn't get it to work well. But yeah, I mean, entire maps that people like couldn't imagine Halo multiplayer without came in last second because of some crazy effort by an environment artist. Like, it was a close thing.
So if you're saying most of you just were expecting the worst,
Yeah.
when the game takes off, was there a moment for you where you just like where it just hit you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my moment came way before we launched, where I was like driving through the second level of Halo, which is called Halo because that's
You
clear.
land on it. Yeah.
And I'm like driving over this terrain, and this Banshee flies by, and my Marine's like shooting at it, and then I take a jump, and I landed on some grunts, and my Marine goes, woo! And I went, oh, we're gonna sell 1 billion of these. Like, this is the best. So I was one of the ones that was like, no, guys, like, it's really gonna be great, because I had to play a lot.
Yeah.
I was playing 12 hours a day to tune and balance, and I did a lot of the kind of weapon and character tweaking toward the end. So I was playing more than anybody else, and some of these guys are just like in max or working on textures or something, and they're not getting to play the game, and so they didn't see it come together right at the end.
So I had Jason Jones, got the chance to sit down with him a few years ago. He doesn't like to talk to us media folks.
He's a private guy.
He is. But I got him to tell me the story about the 3-shot death machine pistol from Halo 1. How he sort of snuck it in there. What is your memory of how all that went down?
Oh, you gotta go there, huh?
Yeah, I'm going there. That's
All
what
right.
that's what we're here for.
Okay, well, it's distant enough, and it worked out okay, so I'm not as sensitive about it anymore. But so I was working on multiplayer weapon balance at the same time as single player, because we try to keep the weapons the same. You don't want them to behave drastically differently. It's kind of confusing.
Players will be like, huh?
Yeah. Well, and also we didn't really have time to do 2 sets of tuning, right? So I had things like basically where I thought they were good, and we sort of locked everything down and then made a couple more tweaks, because you always do. And I was like, all right, I feel good about shipping. Like, I think this is going to work. It's working well in playtests. And then we hit Gold Master, and everybody went home. And then I came in a couple of days later after sleeping probably for 48 hours straight, and I'm playing, and I'm like, wait a second, like, this pistol is a hand cannon now. Like, this is not what went wrong. And I checked all the data and the tags and everything, and I'm like, this hasn't changed at all. Like, it's so close to ship, like nobody would like touch anything or tweak anything. And especially the way we built the game, it would take all of the data sort of kind of uncompressed, and it would crush it down into these cache files. And we were cache locked. Like, we could not change anything that was going to change that cache file, because that's what we were shipping. Well, I found out that Jason had gone into the code, not the data, and made it so anytime you look up the damage for this one weapon in this specific situation in multiplayer, just double it.
And then he trolled you guys with it in multiplayer matches.
Oh,
right?
I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah, and it was like, I was exhausted. But I was also just like shocked because we had spent so long and done so many playtests. And if anybody else in the company had done it, like, it would have been on. But, you know, it's Jason. You kind of have to go with his instincts. I mean, he's got you this far, right? But it took what was basically like supposed to be this puny sidearm and turned it into just a railgun, a death machine, like the only weapon worth using in the game. And so, but people, you know, loved it, and that became a big part of, I think, why Halo was successful. It also made the game a little kind of narrower than we ultimately wanted. So we knew in Halo 2 we couldn't just like undo the change, right? Although I pitched that, and they were like, no, that's not gonna work. So the main thing with Halo 2 was like, okay, well, let's get the affordance, let's get the looks to match the power, because having this like one-handed kind of pistol be the best gun in the game is like not gonna work. So we literally saved the pistol as the battle rifle, and then saved the assault rifle as the SMG, and then redid the art.
Interesting.
Yeah, to kind of preserve the functionality, but match them up a little bit better with the size of gun.
That's awesome. So you were there up until during or after Halo 3?
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there for Halo 3.
So what's your favorite of the Halos? Do you have a favorite? Can you pick a favorite child?
Yes, I think that Halo 1 was probably my favorite to work on. It was just so exciting, and it was really my first big game I got to work on, and I was able to do so much because back then, you know, one guy could do 40% of the missions and balance the weapons and work on the characters and, you know, all the stuff, which, you know, as the team gets bigger and responsibilities get narrower, like I was never able to hit that much of the project as I did. So personally, I think Halo 1 was kind of a more exciting project. I feel like Halo 3 is the best kind of representation of all that Halo can be. Just, you know, the missions are the broadest, and we got to do some of the kind of crazy stuff like the Scarab, and the weapon set is very comprehensive. We weren't cutting weapons right at the very end. So you know, if I'm gonna just sit down and play one, it's gonna be Halo 3, especially because, you know, Halo 1, the movement's so slow and the shields are so slow. Like it feels kind of like a step less powerful than Halo 3. So if I'm gonna play one, it's gonna be Halo 3. But Halo 1's, you know, it's hard to go back.
Solid choice.
Yeah.
You have a gaming-aged son. Does he play Halo and get to brag to all his friends? My dad made that.
No, he's just in kindergarten.
I thought you. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you had an older one.
Some of the other guys at Highwire have older kids that play. So my son does love playing games. He actually plays our current game.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, but he's not ready for Halo. He likes to watch. So I'm
ready to game.
Yeah, he likes to watch me play for sure.
Nice. Well, the game is Golem. The man is Jaime Griesemer. The studio's Highwire Games. We're covering Golem all month long as part of IGN First. Be sure to check out our coverage if you haven't been keeping up with it already. We're going to look for the game at some point. We don't when it's done. To use the old adage. You guys haven't committed to a date just yet, but it is a story-based full game made for VR, not a mini game collection and not a tech demo. Real thing.
Yeah, it's early right now, but we're excited to kind of keep sharing things as they get to the level where we can put them out there, and we're really excited to have people play it.
Great. Jaime, thank you so much, and for much more on Golem, keep it tuned right here to IGN.